Ever since the legendary 2017, I've been waiting for the next incredible gaming year packed with masterpieces and 10 out of 10 titles. Every January, I would hype up the coming year as the second coming of 2017, only to be mildly disappointed come December. Don't get me wrong, we've had some fantastic Switch games since then, some of which I consider my favorites. But no 12-month lineup quite hit that 2017 Platinum standard. The medal, not the game studio. 2023, however, finally delivered a gaming lineup that rivaled 2017, practically mirroring that year's library. A new Zelda, Mario, Xenoblade, albeit DLC. Any year you have those three, I'm going to be very, very satisfied. Throw Fire Emblem into the mix, and you have 4 of my favorite series all in 1 year. With these wonderful titles all vying for the top spot, it's been difficult narrowing down my absolute favorites. After much thought and surprising upsets, I've settled on my top 10 Nintendo Switch titles of 2023. Traditionally, I only reveal my top 6 for the year, but I'm going to mix things up a bit and list my top 10, and then give major focus to the top 6. Hit it! Number 10, Master Detective Archives Ring Code. This is a fun mystery puzzle-solving game that I loved at first sight, and no, it wasn't because of the gameplay, it was because I thought Duet was in the game. It's a good visual novel murder mystery game that has some interesting ideas, although a little long in the tooth when it comes to exposition and dialogue, and maybe not as great into going into certain character depth, if you will. Made by the same people who did Danganronpa, and actually it shows in this game. If you like Ace Attorney style games, I think you'll quite enjoy this one. Not the greatest game ever made, but some great twists, a good plot, and I do think the main character and Shinigami, the Buet character, is pretty great as well. You'll grow attached to her. Number 9, Sea of Stars. I wasn't as high on Sea of Stars as everyone else seems to be. Some people naming it their game of the year, which, hey, that's totally fine. It's a good game. It's a nice callback to how SNES RPGs were, but I feel like it lacked some direction in some ways. The gameplay is good and reminiscent of Chrono Trigger, and actually I really get Mario Superstar Saga vibes, but I wouldn't call it the pinnacle of RPG gameplay. It's a good looking game with a good gameplay loop and some interesting puzzles here and there. I thought the characters were kind of all over the place and maybe a little boring at times. They really just threw all sorts of story plots left and right with not much connection, but there were some good story moments and some good twists. I like a good twist, but because of that, it does make this list, and I do think it's a good game. Number 8, Super Mario RPG. It's kind of funny that a game that was somewhat inspired by Super Mario RPG just didn't quite beat it out in a year that they both had a release. This is my first time playing Super Mario RPG, and I was pretty skeptical going into it. I thought that it wouldn't live up to modern day standards, but I was wrong. I mean, yeah, sure, it shows its age in various ways, but the updated graphics and quality of life improvements really help polish it and make it appear as a gem. Really, it's a great game. I was surprised how much I loved it. Yes, it's short and it's simple, but I think it shines because of that simplicity. And I think it's refreshing to have a short RPG experience like this. And above all else, it's charming. It's one of the most charming games I've ever played. Even though it doesn't have a whole lot of characters, the characters that it does have, their cute little mannerisms, their quirky qualities, their little story beats that they have are just adorable and enjoyable. I don't know. I never thought I'd call a short mustached man adorable, but here I am. I think it's a fantastic game, and I now see why so many people love this RPG. And it's not just nostalgia. It truly is a good game, a great game, and I'm very happy to make this list. Number 7, Zen Blade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. As anyone who's been watching the channel knows, I'm a huge Xenoblade fan. Xenoblade Chronicles really got me back into gaming, and I've been really invested in the series ever since. Future Redeemed, my expectations for this game were pretty high, especially since I adored Xenoblade 2's DLC, Torn of the Golden Country. And I'm not going to say that my expectations weren't met, but it didn't surpass them, like so many Xenoblade games have. It's really the story that I have an issue with. The gameplay has probably been the best it's ever been, and I hope that future Xenoblade Chronicles games build on what Future Redeemed did gameplay-wise. But the story is really convoluted and almost nonsensical in a way, with how it brings back certain characters. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but brings back certain characters and tries to tie everything in somewhat connection to what happens in the main game of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It just becomes a little messy, and it didn't really satisfy the questions that I had after Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That said, there is a teaser at the very end of what the future could be like for the Xenoblade series, and that is exciting and has really gotten the community talking. So regardless, I think it was a success for Xenoblade, and it made my number 7 game of the year. So I certainly enjoyed it quite a bit. Okay, with that out of the way, it's time to get to my top 6. Starting with Metroid Prime Remastered. Much like in 2020 when I placed Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition in my top 6, I'm placing another remaster of a masterpiece in my top 6 for 2023. Without a doubt, Metroid Prime is a masterpiece and one of the best games I have ever played, and this remastered edition spruces up the graphics to make it even better to play in the modern day. What makes Metroid Prime special is not just that it perfectly replicates the 2D gameplay into a 3D environment. It stands by itself as one of the best puzzle adventure games of all time. As someone whose introduction to the series was through this game, not including Smash, I was captivated with Metroid gameplay, progressively exploring an alien world and solving puzzles with new abilities. At its core, it's essentially a Zelda game in space, well, pre-Breath of the Wild. And being a longtime Zelda fan, it's no wonder I fell in love with Prime. Samus's first 3D adventure starts with one of the best cold opens in Nintendo history, effectively setting up the look and feel for the bounty hunter's new adventure. I love how the narrative throws you right into this creepy abandoned station. No complicated exposition, just pure, atmospheric storytelling and gameplay. In typical Metroid fashion, Samus soon loses her overpowered space bird gear, escaping to the planet below and starting over from scratch. She roams the varying biomes of Talon 4 to gain both old and new powers to escape the dangerous planet and destroy the space pirates, because in Samus's mind, genocide is always an option. Oh gosh, never an option, children. The Switch remake effectively replicates the same wonderment and awe I felt when I first opened Retro's crowning achievement. No matter how many times I play, I never grow tired of exploring Talon 4, unearthing its secrets, and taking down terrifying enemies. If you love puzzle adventure games, you'll lose yourself in Metroid Prime. It is one of the best in that genre. And if you haven't picked up the remaster yet, get it now. Get it now before it's gone for good and you have to wait for another 10 years in order to get the remaster, to save yourself the trouble. Oh, and Metroid Prime 4, where are you? We've been waiting so long. Please come out. Fire Emblem Engage. I struggled the most figuring out where to place Fire Emblem Engage on this list, if at all. There's a lot to love as well as dislike, yet at its core, it's still a Fire Emblem game, and a good one at that. Engage's strength is its focus on gameplay. Fire Emblem as of late had admittedly strayed away from the series' main selling point, strategic anime chess. I mean, the missions were still there and played a huge part, but the story and side content started to take on bigger roles and more hours to complete. But as you can see by these numbers, that type of content sells. That being said, some veteran fans and hipsters who hate anything that's popular wanted less of the fluff and more of the tough. Totally fine if you felt that way. If that's you, Engage hits that spot, for the most part. What it lacks in narrative depth, Engage more than makes up for in map and level design, creating some of the best missions that I've seen from the series. Levels require greater predictive strategizing, as you plan out spacing, enemy placement, engage abilities, and supporting attacks. Now, it's not perfect. For example, a majority of the maps bloat the mission with practically endless reinforcements. That's just annoying. And whoever decided to use Fate's terrible RNG ratio needs to pay for their sins. But overall, the levels are an improvement from Three Houses' arguably empty field designs. Still love you, baby. However, the reason I originally fell in love with Fire Emblem was the melding of story and gameplay. Actually, I didn't truly become obsessed with the series until Fire Emblem Echoes, where I personally felt there was a gripping story and cast to go along the engaging and strategic gameplay. That's what I look for in a Fire Emblem game. Unfortunately, Engage didn't have that motivating melding that I expect from the series. While there are a couple of great twists, especially if you include the DLC, the narrative is dragged down by generic, uninspired plot points that do the bare minimum in justifying each battle. The playable units in Engage are slightly more interesting, offering a little more depth than, say, Fates or even Awakening's cast, but it's still a far cry from the wonderful writing and world building provided in previous Fire Emblem games. Although, I'll admit, support conversations don't always make sense no matter which game you play. If it sounds like I'm being too harsh on Engage, I'm truly sorry. I know not everyone values story as much as I do, particularly within this series, but I do believe there can be a perfect balance between excellent game design and storytelling. Even though Engage is not my favorite Fire Emblem game, I still had a lot of fun with this celebration title, enough for it to make my Game of the Year list. That definitely counts for something. Super Mario Bros. Wonder. With the release of the Super Mario Bros. Movie in early 2023, it only made sense that Nintendo would cash in on the Mario hype and have a new game out before the year was over. And while I'm still waiting for a sequel to the fantastic 3D platformer Super Mario Odyssey, the time was right for the next edition of 2D side-scrolling Mario Adventure. Escaping from the new Super Mario Bros. Look that clearly overstayed its welcome, Super Mario Bros. Wonder refreshes the genre with new gameplay elements, art style, characters, and ideas that harken back to my personal favorite 2D Mario game, Super Mario Bros. World. There's plenty to gush about with Wonder, but what truly sets us apart from other Mario adventures are the Wonder Seeds. When activated in-game, the current level changes entirely, completely flipping the gameplay script for a time. From running away from dancing piranha plants to transforming into a sticky slime creature, you can never really guess what crazy trip the seed will take you on next. And surprisingly, no two levels are exactly alike, although some build on previous concepts. The minds at Nintendo truly outdid themselves when crafting these unique ideas, not only for the normal levels, but the wacky Wonder Seed portions as well. Last thing I'll mention for the sake of moving on is the online features. While it might seem backwards for Nintendo to not allow typical online multiplayer modes, it's very Nintendo-like to come up with new ideas for online. While that usually means mixed results, Nintendo hits it on the head with Wonder. I love the Ghost co-op and how players can help each other by setting checkpoints. Plus, through connecting with friends online, you can still run through the game together, just not in the conventional way. I'm not saying every platformer should copy this style, but it was a fun take on the multiplayer experience. Overall, Wonder is a must-play platformer that will tickle your good feel bone for hours with its charming style and creative design. While Wonder doesn't surpass World in my eyes, it certainly states its case as one of the best 2D Mario games yet, because of the elephant power-up. Do you have any idea what you've done, Nintendo? Can you fathom the chaos you've unleashed on this world?
Even better. Thanks, Miyamoto.
I never approved of this, for the record. It's not my fault. I'm a relatively new Pikmin fan. While I was aware of the series from its initial release on GameCube, I was intimidated by its seemingly intense puzzle-solving mechanics.
What do you mean all the Pikmin die if I don't get them back to the ship? I can't handle that responsibility, I'm only 10!
Fast forward a decade or so later, and that still sounds quite overwhelming.
Who am I to play God with these adorable creatures?
It wasn't until Pikmin 3 Deluxe jumped the Wii U ship and landed on Switch that I bit the anxiety bullet and tried Miyamoto's Love Project. As an introduction to the series, it was good. Gorgeous environments, frightening bosses, tasty fruit, and fun puzzles. I didn't fall in love with the series, but I had a good time and can see why the Pikmin fanbase adored the game so unconditionally. It really put all those Arlo Pikmin tirade videos into perspective. For one reason or another, however, I was still a tad bit apprehensive to pick up Pikmin 4 when it released last summer. Something about Jungle Olimar creeped me out. You're not fooling anybody, Nintendo, we all know that's Olimar. But after hearing so much praise for it online and from my friends, I finally bought it. Apologies for the long exposition, I'm just setting up context for my hot take. Here we go. Pikmin 4 is the best game in the series that I've played. That's not saying much, but hey, Pikmin, did you say something? No, sorry, I was just saying, hey, Pikmin 4 is the best Pikmin game I've played. Oh, okay. So you don't need me? Yeah. Are you sure? Pretty positive. Gotcha. You know, some people thought I was Pikmin 4. Would you get out of here? Pikmin 4 doesn't reinvent the series in the same way Breath of the Wild reimagined Zelda. Instead, it modernizes the RTS puzzle game with new and returning features and streamlines the gameplay for fans of all ages. These changes lower the hurdle of entering and enjoying the series. to its benefit. It all starts with a mentality change. You're not quickly escaping a hostile planet, as is series tradition. This time, you're on a rescue mission that allows you to take your time exploring the planet. Rather than bogging down the player with a tight game over deadline, Pikmin 4 is merciful enough to give you as many days as you need to complete your missions. For some longtime players, this change might sour the traditional experience. But for me, I felt like I could finally breathe and explore without worrying about my impending doom. My anxiety turned into relaxation, for the most part. If you felt similar stress when playing or even hearing about previous Pikmin games, I strongly believe you will enjoy Pikmin 4 this time around as well. To further streamline the experience, Pikmin 4 introduces a new companion, Ochi. You know, I didn't think I would love this noseless yellow furball as much as I do, but gosh dang it if Ochi isn't the best Nintendo pet companion since Polterpup. He's everything you could want in a partner. Sniffs out treasure, gathers Pikmin, guides his own team, fights monsters. Above all else, however, is Ochi's usefulness as transportation. Moving from treasure to treasure is a breeze, now that you don't have to worry about losing track of wandering Pikmin. Then when you find an enemy, you ram Ochi into it, throwing your Pikmin armada onto the hungry creature until they deplete its life force and harvest its lifeless corpse. It is quintessentially the circle of life. Anyway, Ochi is a fluffy Swiss Army knife, ready to tackle almost any challenge as long as he trained properly. For those craving anxiety-inducing Pikmin panic, there are separate gameplay modes that harken back to the traditional style. They certainly got my heart racing at least, but you do need to roll credits before actually reaching that point, so maybe it's not ideal for classic fans. Still, I'm impressed Nintendo decided to include so much content into this fourth game, offering varying levels of difficulty and hours of gameplay. After finishing Pikmin 4, I finally consider myself a fan of the series. It's cute, satisfying, stressful, exciting, and relaxing all in one. And I can't wait to join other Nintendo YouTubers in ranting about not getting a sequel. It's been 6 months, Nintendo! Where's Pikmin 5? You could always play me in the meantime. I'm afraid not. It was worth a shot. As someone who praised the first Octopath Traveler and was equally devastated when they released a mobile-only prequel soon after, it's perhaps no surprise that I love the sequel. But I didn't expect Octopath Traveler 2 to be better than the original in every way. Combat, side quest, overworld, writing, plot, in-game music, bosses, everything is improved in the sequel, making it one of the best JRPGs on the Switch. The developers at Square Enix and Acquire have been fantastic in absorbing user feedback and tweaking their games based on player critique. While they didn't offer early access for Octopath 2 like the original, the development team knew the first game's criticism, took to heart its flaws, and worked to fix them in Octopath 2. You can clearly see the benefit of that self-reflection in every factor. It may not be the perfect RPG adventure, but it's closer than it ever has been. The biggest complaint from the first game was the lack of connection between the 8 playable heroes on their individual journey. In Octopath 2, the game provides more opportunities for the party to interact, whether in light-hearted tavern conversations or during quick asides in the middle of a story event. These features were in the original, but the sequel's improved writing gives more emotional connection between this new cast. Octopath 2 also adds new story quests between 2 party members that explore not only their relationship, but the deep lore of Solistia. Good enough. These side quests are optional and don't prevent you from completing each of the 8 story threads, but I highly recommend going through them. Not only do you find great character moments, it also leads to a finale that ties the 8 plots into one and will leave you shooketh. Of course, the key to any RPG is a fun, fluid gameplay loop, and Octopath Traveler 2 delivers in that regard very well. If you enjoy old-school turn-based combat with a bit of puzzle solving thrown in, you'll quickly warm up to this system. Finding and exploiting opponents' weaknesses, eventually breaking them in the process, is instantly entertaining and equally challenging when facing stronger bosses. Many of my toughest battles came down to stopping my opponent right before they unleash a devastating final attack. I live for those satisfying close calls, although I also like mopping the floor with a seemingly hard boss. Both are good feelings. Grinding is greatly improved in the sequel as well, to the point where I never thought I needed to grind an area I've previously explored. If you go through nearly everything the world has to offer, your party will be adequately strong to take on their story finales and whatever lies beyond the end. It was never overly easy, but I wasn't bashing my head against the wall because I couldn't get past a beefy boss. Although be warned, they do have a lot of health. especially towards the end.
It's been 100 turns, why won't you die?
If you gave the first Octopath a chance and didn't like it, well, perhaps Octopath 2 won't be the miracle pill to change your mind. But if you're a fan of SNES JRPG adventures, Octopath Traveler 2 will spark that good nostalgia fix, with satisfying combat, deep lore, engaging character stories, and an unexpectedly twisty ending. And now it's time for my number one Nintendo game of the year. Even in a year with hit after hit, there's no denying that one game stood above the rest as the pinnacle of Nintendo games. Not only was it the most anticipated Switch release worldwide since maybe Smash in 2018, it was following up the very masterpiece that put Switch on the map in the platinum year of 2017. Of course, it goes without saying what I'm talking about. But that doesn't mean Tears of the Kingdom is the perfect Zelda adventure, or even the perfect sequel. It certainly has flaws, both inherited and original, but the highs far outweigh the lows. Most of Tears of the Kingdom's awe-inspiring moments happen thanks to the bolstered main campaign, something I couldn't say with Breath of the Wild. It's clear to me that Nintendo wanted to include more traditional storytelling in this sequel, rather than only letting the player stumble on hints about post-apocalyptic Hyrule. There's nothing wrong with that style of narrative, of course, but I do prefer a solid, well-written story to go along with that mysterious lore. While I do think Tears could have had a better Zelda campaign, it definitely delivered some impactful cutscenes and gameplay sequences that I'll be daydreaming about for a long time. One scene in particular stands out as one of my favorites in all of gaming. Future Zelda games have a lot to live up to when it comes to that traditional Zelda moment. Truly breathtaking. If you know, you know. But of course, gameplay is king with Nintendo. As the good man Reggie Fils-Aimé once said, if the game's not fun, why bother? The Zelda team wasn't going to make a direct sequel unless they knew they had gameplay ideas in the back pocket ready to execute, even if it took 6 years to develop. Despite returning to the same Hyrule, Tears of the Kingdom adds enough new content to keep its predecessor's soul alive. The joy of discovery. Gosh, that sounds kind of cringe. You are cringe! Oh, okay, that works then. Places previously explored in Breath of the Wild often take new shapes in Tears of the Kingdom, encouraging you to once again search every corner of Hyrule. Admittedly, it does get a little tiresome to traverse the same plains, desert, and mountain ranges from the previous game, but that feeling is quickly replaced by excitement upon entering a new cave or stumbling on a new puzzle. Where Tears excels, at least compared to Breath of the Wild, is filling Hyrule with meaningful NPCs. The world is much more alive and thriving than it was during Calamity Ganon's reign. There are meaningful quests, quirky, memorable characters, and redesigned villages that showcase Hyrule as a living, breathing community. While they certainly could have built it up more, I'm very pleased with what they've included. On top of that, and below it as well, Link can now travel across Sky Islands and traverse the sprawling underground. But truthfully, I'm a little mixed about both terrains. The idea is certainly exciting, and some areas made for great puzzles, but there's just not a lot going on in the sky or below the dirt. It's unfortunately empty. Even more empty than Hyrule. The downtime in between the exciting discoveries dragged down the adventure to where I had to push myself to continue exploring at times. I don't need flashy fights and tough puzzles every minute, but I do need more incentive than what the game provides. To clarify, for the underground and the sky, there just wasn't a whole lot going up or down there. On the other hand, the vital selling point of Tears of the Kingdom was its seemingly boundless crafting ability that lit up social media for weeks. Players and content creators loved fusing new creations, either clever or stupid, and sharing their creativity with others. Something about building barely functional contraptions and houses is widely appealing to some gamers, or most gamers. I know it ain't me. While I'm not one of those gifted individuals, I can barely make a functional go-kart in Tears of the Kingdom, the sheer ability to freely interact with your surroundings is worth praising. I respect this complete change of gameplay philosophy, as if the developers saw players breaking Breath of the Wild and decided to exploit that for the sequel. On that subject, Tears of the Kingdom is a technical marvel and seriously underappreciated. The game development required to create that craftable world and seamlessly transition from sky to underground on the Switch hardware is mind-blowing. How did they get this to work? What Nintendo magic did they cast to prevent Hyrule from exploding after gluing 100 sticks together? And more importantly, how much weight did Monolith Soft lift to get this game working? I'm telling you, Monolith Soft is doing some heavy lifting. Say what you will about Nintendo hardware, but their in-house software titles are technical marvels. At least if it's Mario or Zelda. Maybe Xenoblade, but you get my point. Well done, Nintendo. A common argument against Tears of the Kingdom is that it's just a glorified DLC expansion. And honestly, I don't completely disagree. Link returns to the same world, but modified with new features to encourage exploration. The story builds on the campaign of the base game, combat hasn't changed much aside from a new set of powers, even the tutorial area is identical to the opening sequence of Breath of the Wild. Whether you personally call that DLC content or a direct sequel, all that matters at the end of the day is, was it worth spending 200 hours in? Yes, I know I'm very slow. We've been over this! If this is the last year of the Switch before Nintendo transitions to their next console, Nintendo Double, calling it now, then there is no more fitting masterpiece to be its swan song than a sequel to the masterpiece that started its historic run. For all these reasons and more, my #1 game of the year is Suika Game. It's so cute and addicting. It's like adorable fruit Tetris. They're gonna fire you for work because I can't stop playing this game. No, that's not, I'm just kidding, but it is addicting. Thank you all for watching my late 2023 Game of the Year video. Did your favorite Switch game make the list? Let me know in the comments below. We should be getting news from Nintendo about the future console or a Nintendo Direct any weekday now, so please look forward to my reactions to that. Until then, see you later.